Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to everybody else who's joining us today to learn a little bit more about Kraken Energy and what we've been doing as a company. Starting off, for anybody who's unfamiliar with the company, Kraken Energy is a rather new but rapidly evolving junior exploration and development company focused on uranium assets, specifically in the USA. Before I get too far into the slide deck, I'd just like to say there are 2 points that I really like people to take away from this presentation that I give. Because our company is so focused on, our strategy is focused on advanced stage assets rather than greenfield, it gives us the opportunity to skip the greenfield stage almost entirely. And this really lessens the initial investment risk that is so common with junior mining and exploration, but also at the same time, that really gives us an opportunity to utilize the advanced infrastructure on our projects already in place to give us the opportunity to fast track the process to bring our projects to a production ready state. So looking at the current situation of Kraken Energy, we have 3 high-grade uranium assets based in Nevada, all 3 of them being past producers. They were really shut down before they were allowed to reach their potential. All 3 properties across them, we have historic mining grades between 0.24 to 0.25% U3O8 and confirmed hand samples up to 3.19% U3O8. They all have year-round access. They have great infrastructure, including access to power and water. And there's additional value on through the economic potential of additional commodities such as silver, gold, even copper, nickel, and molybdenum, just to name a few. And really bringing this all together is the experienced team that we have in place at the company. So just a quick snapshot of the properties that are a part of the company so far. Garfield Hills, we've been actively drilling for the past few months. It's 3 hours southeast of Reno, Nevada, perfectly situated close to Hawthorne, Nevada. And our primary focus getting out there with the initial drilling program was to confirm the historic results of 0.18 and 0.26% U3O8, both over 14-meter intervals. The Apex Uranium Mine, also nicely situated 3 hours east of Reno, Nevada, was Nevada's largest past producing uranium mine. Average grade of 0.25% was the production grade, and hand samples up to 3.19% U3O8. The most recent addition to the company being Huber Hills, it was Elko County's largest uranium past producer at an average grade of 0.24%. So really, by focusing on our key selection criteria for bringing projects into the company, our goal is to bring together a realistic hub and spoke mining model for domestic uranium production in the continental United States. So by prioritizing assets that were past producers or have a historic resource in place, whether it's compliant or not, or at very least have some advanced stage of exploration on the property, really allows us to minimize the risk and maximize the ability for us to move forward quickly with our projects. Again, if we consider the high grade, look for additional value through other commodities, infrastructure is key, and the year-round accessibility is definitely a bonus. Moving forward with these projects, the hub and spoke model is proven across the world, and that's really our focus for bringing additional properties into the company as we build up our portfolio. Looking at the team, that was really a large part of why I chose, or my reasoning to join Kraken. Between Garrett, Galen, Troy, and myself, we really cover the entire spectrum of uranium exploration, from greenfields exploration through multiple discoveries, feasibility, mine planning, and all the way to production. And this is really, really important for a company like us to be able to follow through with our company's strategic plan going forward. We all really enjoy a challenge, and I do believe that we are perfectly situated to capitalize on any momentum in the uranium market going forward. We continue to build up our team with the guidance of our experienced board of directors. The most recent addition to our team being Madeline Berry as a senior geologist. Not on this slide is the soon-to-be announced vice president of exploration, a gentleman from Elko, Nevada, with 20 years experience in the industry across the states and internationally. A long-standing history of working beside the U.S. Forest Service and the BLM, which is fantastic for our permitting processes going forward. Jumping right into the projects to get a few specifics. Again, Garfield Hills, we've been actively drilling for the past few months now. We are situated 3 hours southeast of Reno, Nevada. Perfectly situated 12 kilometers outside of Hawthorne, Nevada, with road access to and through the property. What you see here is the current land package of roughly 1,300 hectares. Originally, only 350 hectares were optioned for this property, but as part of our initial stages of exploration, we always fly an airborne radiometric and magnetic survey. Very quickly, we found that there was much more potential on this property and aggressively staked around it. There's a 2% NSR on this property where 50% can be purchased back. And as I said, the initial focus when we went out there for a maiden drilling program was to confirm these historic drill results of 0.18 and 0.26% U3O8 on the property. As we're just closing up the drilling program this week on the property, these pictures are from our most recent press release, and you can see some nice radioactive results downhole, continuous intervals up to and exceeding 5,000 CPS downhole. We're very encouraged by this, and we're very confident that we'll at least see in the 0.1% U3O8 range. And we really look forward to build this up and look forward to a phase 2 drilling program later this year. Additional reasoning for the excitement behind this program, what you see on the right-hand side there is the radiometric survey over the Garfield Hills property. The yellow, red, and oranges are the surface expression of elevated radioactivity. The dots that you can see across the map are where our team has gone out and ground truthed by prospecting with a handheld spectrometer to make sure that what we're actually seeing is uranium rather than thorium or potassium. So you can see the values across the map there, some of them exceeding 50 ppm estimated uranium from the handheld spectrometer. You can see the area of current drilling and the potential of this mineralized strike length of over 4 kilometers already known on the property. So as we get the assays back in the coming month, we are, as I said, looking very much forward to getting back out there, replanning and proceeding with a phase 2 drilling program on this project this year. The Apex Uranium Mine, as I said, was the original flagship of the company, and for great reasons. It's also nicely situated in Nevada, 3 hours east of Reno and 3 hours southwest of Elko. The property land package right now is a little bit over 3,900 hectares, and it is 5 kilometers south of the small town of Austin, Nevada. Great infrastructure, being a past producing area. There's road access to, through, and across the property, as well as power lines and easy water access only 5 kilometers away. There is a 3% NSR on this property that can be acquired back by Kraken. This slide, similar to the one I just showed from Garfield Hills, shows the airborne radiometric survey that we flew over the entire property. You can see in the yellows and the reds the highlighted expression of radioactivity on surface. Across the property, we've also confirmed at those prospect points where you can see the red and white dots across the map, confirmed radioactivity actually matches with mineralization on surface through hand sample. But the big selling point on this one that I like people to take away is the location of the Apex Uranium Mine, past producer, on the far west side, and the past producing Lowboy Uranium Mine on the far east side. We've confirmed surface mineralization across that full 13-kilometer strike length. And based on the VTEM surveys that we're having interpreted right now, things are looking fantastic for this property across that and through the center. We're very excited to finish up the permitting process and plan for our phase 1 drilling program on this property this year. Little snapshot just showing the historic production grades. 106,000 pounds of U3O8 came off this property back in the late 1950s at an average grade of 0.25%. And that's really all situated and reliant on the results that you can see on this slide right here. Like grades of 3 meters at 1.3%, 34 meters at 0.4%, and 15 meters at 0.5%. These are fantastic grades worldwide. It doesn't matter where you are. These are significant grades and more than enough to start building a resource off of, which we're very excited to go back out there and follow up with. Even more exciting is the continuity of these grades. So a 250-ton bulk sample was taken off the Apex property, which assayed over 0.7% U3O8. And once again, we have confirmed hand samples of up to 3.19% U3O8. In historic reports, we have unconfirmed samples that have read up to 7% U3O8 on this property. Beyond that, as I mentioned, the additional value on our properties is very significant. Apex actually started as a silver mine back in the 1930s and had grades up to 7,300 grams per ton silver. More recently, we've seen grades of up to 15 grams per ton gold. And now, based on our more recent soil sampling that was completed last summer, we are seeing economic potential specifically on this property for copper and nickel, as well as a few other commodities. Huber Hills is the most recent addition to the company as an exploration program. We've got it situated an hour and a half northwest of Elko, Nevada. and it was Elko County's largest uranium producer. So besides being close to Elko, we're 2 kilometers east of Mountain City, Nevada. Again, perfect infrastructure in place. We've got road access to and across the south edge of the property. There is no NSR on this property, and it also has access perfectly to power and water. You can see on the southwest corner there, the historic racetrack open pit mine. It did produce at an average grade of 0.24% in the early 60s. And we have confirmed 2007 channel samples, both over 4.5 meter intervals at 0.149 and 0.102% U3O8. Coincident with the uranium showings on this map are also molybdenum showings of significant grade. So we're definitely looking forward to getting out there, flying our initial UAV surveys on this property and planning a drill program for later this year. Here's a snapshot just quickly looking at the progress of our projects as we move forward concurrently with them. Garfield Hills, as I mentioned, we're just wrapping up the drilling program, our maiden program right now this week. We expect to have results back from the lab, hopefully in the coming month, so that we can start planning for our phase 2 program later this year. Apex Uranium Mine permitting is in process with the U.S. Forest Service. Everything is going well so far, and we expect to commence drilling this year. Huber Hills is a bit more of an early stage project. So initially we're going to get out there, do our UAV radiometric and magnetic surveying, do a bit of prospecting on the ground with our team, put together our drill planning and move forward for drilling later this year. Look at our capital structure of the company. So right now we have a very clean structure, a little over 64 million diluted, a bit over $8 million cash in the bank. Trading around a $16 million market cap at the moment, which gives us an amazing enterprise value. And at the time of writing here, about 22% of the company is owned by management and insiders. So really bringing all of this information together, we believe that we have a clear path forward to achieve our goals strategically. We have high-grade assets, and we continue to look at additional evaluations to bring assets into the company and really build up a basis for this hub-and-spoke mining model. And in the end, the team that we have in place has done all of this before. So we're very confident, and we look forward to the coming years with Kraken Energy.
Thank you.
Pretty much brings me to the end of the presentation. So I'm a bit quicker than planned, but that gives us plenty of time for questions and discussion.
Sounds good. Sorry, I cut you off there. I thought you were done.
That's
and
okay.
I didn't want to seem like I wasn't paying attention.
No worries at all.
All right. Time for questions is always a good thing. Some have come in, and I certainly have written a few down myself as you went along. So let's jump in. Okay, let's start with some that are, you obviously just went through your assets. So let's start with a few questions that are quite specific to your assets.
Certainly.
One of them is, can you talk about the grades that you're encountering or expecting, hoping to find at your project in the context of grades around the world?
Absolutely. So Garfield Hills that we're currently drilling right now, as I said, our initial focus was to get out there and confirm the historic results of 0.18 and 0.26% U3O8. Based on what we're seeing, we're quite confident that we will be at or above that 0.1% threshold. Now, comparing that to worldwide mining grades, it does vary quite drastically. Across the world, you see average mining grades anywhere from 20% in the Athabasca Basin to very successful operations in situ recovery at 0.02%. So we are significantly higher than the low end of that, which puts us into the high grade area of uranium mineralization.
And of course, this all depends on the range of grade is because there is such a range of mining methods, right? And so there's Absolutely. A range of mining methods and there's scale versus, there's all kinds of factors that play into whether a 0.2, 0.1% uranium asset would make sense or not. But in this sort of environment, it does make sense.
Yes.
There's some questions about you mentioned some of the other minerals that you either are finding or think you might find at some of your projects. Someone is specifically asking about scandium. Does there happen to be scandium in association with the mineralization?
That's a good question, and I actually don't have the answer for that. Just looking back at the previous exploration that happened on our properties, all three of them, in fact, it was very focused when they did the assays on either gold, silver, or uranium. Nobody ever really did a full multispectral analysis on these properties. So that's something that we've been doing since we took over, and we've been doing our soil sampling, prospecting, and we will be doing on the drill core that's been coming out of Garfield Hills as well. So that's where we're seeing these newer results that include copper, nickel, molybdenum. As we develop that geochemical database, I can answer that question, but at the moment, I'm not sure if scandium is part of that asset.
These things always take time to evolve.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's take a step back here and just talk about, I mean, I want to talk about putting this portfolio together and how that works in the landscape of uranium right now, but let's start that sort of conversation with what is your view on uranium right now? I mean, we are facing uncertain macroeconomic times, but there's this bullish, fabric in the uranium space. What is your outlook on uranium?
I'm very positive looking at the uranium space right now. I know a lot of people are frustrated, to be quite honest. Everybody expected uranium to take off a little bit more quickly this year, coming into January of 2023, and it just hasn't happened yet. But the facts remain the same, that the demand for uranium keeps increasing, and it's going to continue doing that. And supply is getting harder and harder to secure. Across the world, the gap between supply and demand keeps growing. It depends where you look or where you're getting information from, but people are estimating anywhere from 50 to 100 million pound deficits year after year coming into the next decade. So as soon as utility providers get out there and all of a sudden they aren't able to secure a contract, it's only a matter of time before for lack of better wording, countries start going dark because they can't power their reactors. So when that happens, there is no other choice but for the uranium price to go up.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've seen the uranium space is known for these sort of utilities dragging their feet and delaying as long as possible their response to a pending supply crunch. And then when they go, they all go together, and it creates these insane market moments. In that sense, when people see a uranium bull market potentially developing, all kinds of new players flood into the space, right? That, we look back only a few years and we were down to a few dozen real uranium juniors, and now that number has multiplied, and that's okay. Talk about developing Kraken Energy. How competitive was it to find these projects? I'm sure it's your team and your long-standing knowledge of uranium that gave you the in, but talk about how the space has felt as you've tried to develop a new company within it.
Like you said, it's definitely getting more competitive. And just stepping back for a second, I do have to give a lot of the credit for the current portfolio to the previous management. I came in with 2 of the assets already in place, recently added in Huber Hills. So kudos to them. They did a fantastic job of building up the company before my entrance. As far as project acquisitions going right now, we're still in a pretty favorable place for that. It hasn't gotten to the competitive point of being overpriced looking at opportunities. But the great thing, or the great part of the situation we're in right now, is that not just Nevada, but the US in general has a very, very long-standing history of uranium exploration and development that most people don't know about. So it was really kicked off in the 1950s and 60s, but only because the US government was offering large incentives for that production and development. And as soon as those incentives were taken away, all these projects just kind of went to the wayside and were forgotten. And that's why at the very start of my presentation, I said they were shut down before reaching their potential. And that's why a lot of these projects that have just been ignored or hidden or forgot for the last 60, 70 years still have resources in place that can be gone back, built up, and exploited.
And that actually probably answers one of the other questions that came in, which is why weren't your properties developed and mined out fully years ago? I guess that's precisely what happened at all 3 of your assets.
That's part of it. And also along that time frame in the 60s, 70s is when discoveries started being made in the Athabasca Basin. So when they started making discoveries of, double-digit percentages and putting those into production, it really shifted the world's focus to the Athabasca Basin, and it stayed that way for the last 50, 60 years. So with that in play, the demand was never significant enough to start going back and looking at assets like these that are still high grade, but just didn't really compare to the Athabasca Basin.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Okay, so Kraken's still a newer company. Uranium market, we all are on this on this call, probably partly because we believe in uranium happening, but we don't know when that will kick off. Let's put those two together. How does Kraken, how do you balance an aggressive approach to advancing your projects, which requires aggressive spending, that's the nature of exploration and development, with perhaps caution because you're not sure exactly when this timing will really balance out? How do you approach that conundrum?
Of course, exploration is expensive, but that's one of the wonderful things of having advanced stage assets. Again, as I said early on in my presentation, it lessens our expenditures and our investment risk by not having to go out and make a discovery. The discovery's already been made, it's been proven through production, and with resources left in the ground, our job comes down to going back, proving up that resource, and moving through the stages to become production ready. So not to simplify it too much, but it really puts us in a good position to lessen our expenditures and maximize on the work of the people before us.
Fair enough. Okay. You as a CEO get the job of trying to find people who are interested in owning Kraken Energy, right? That's a big job of a CEO. Obviously, there's operational aspects to the job as well. I don't mean to diminish those, but communicating the investment opportunity is a big part of what you do. So let's talk about how that's been going. Who are you finding is interested in uranium? What kinds of players? Or have there been surprises in that? Have there been disappointments in that? Talk to me about who in the investment world seems to be interested in the uranium opportunity right now.
That's an interesting question, and it's quite mixed and quite surprising right now. Go back a year and everybody was excited. Everybody wanted to be in uranium. But because of the way the spot price has been going, it's so kind of stagnant right now. It's a bit all over the board. So retail investment definitely hasn't been too excited about uranium lately. It kind of comes and goes based on news flow, based on, if the US government is doing something to ban imports from Russia, then everybody gets excited. If they offer more incentives, everybody gets excited. So at the moment, uranium, but they should be.
Gotcha. And what about on, that's the retail side. What about on the bigger scale? I mean, Kraken, I guess, is a bit small to even be trying to court larger players, but you're probably still ear to the floor on that.
Absolutely. Again, we're in a good position right now and not looking to do any financing, but institutional people, they're definitely, or more often than not, able to consider the longer term, unlike retail investors. So we do have great support on that side of things from larger players and strategic shareholders. So them understanding the long-term interest in uranium and where the market is going is definitely a support to our company.
Gotcha. Okay, so looking ahead over the rest of 2023, let's say, highlight for me what you hope happens, what you're trying to achieve, and then what you hope happens at your assets through the remainder of this year.
Sure. Just before I talk about that portion, normally I would say it depends on the uranium price, but in this case, I actually don't think it does. If uranium stays where it is, we're still in a great situation to move forward with our assets the way they are, even though, again, optimistically, I see no reason that the uranium spot price shouldn't be 75 plus by the end of the year. So with that in consideration, really what we're looking forward to right now is getting our assays back from Garfield Hills, our maiden drilling program, seeing how they correlate to the historic results, and really excited about getting out there and planning up a phase 2 drilling program on that project. Besides that, we definitely are excited to get the permit approval finished up for Apex, get out to that property, which was the original flagship, and then follow through with drilling on both Apex and Huber Hills later this year. But besides that, one of my biggest focuses is bringing in additional assets to the company, building up that portfolio so we really secure that foundation for that realistic hub and spoke mining model.
Gotcha. Okay. And that probably brings us around or leads directly into, if I'm going to ask you to wrap up and in wrapping up, why, Kraken, why should Kraken be top of investors' mind when considering investing in a higher risk, more speculative? I understand that they're advanced assets, but this is still the smaller end of the uranium equity space. Why should Kraken stand out against competitors in that space?
Again, just highlighting the things that I've touched on through our conversation in the presentation. We're situated very nicely in the way that we can lessen investment risk for people looking to get into uranium or get into the space by the fact that we're not looking to make a greenfields discovery. So we lessen our exploration dollars by only looking to prove up historic resources and move forward in that fashion. But also because of the lack of sentiment for uranium over the last 3 months, we are, unfortunately for us, great for investors at a very attractive entry point. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for people that want to get into the space, people that are already in the space. The Kraken is a great opportunity for a company to develop and move forward.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much. Sorry if anybody heard any crying, that was my baby, and he just woke up and my husband was just taking him down the stairs there. So that's what was going on in the background. Perhaps you could hear some little cries. I do have a 4-month-old who was sleeping in the other room. Anyways, thank you so much, Matthew. Great I love uranium. I'm very bullish on uranium. And I love to see the space getting the attention it deserves. And in particular, of course, from a team like yours, which has just so much uranium expertise, ability, a real new small player in the uranium space. And I'll just take a moment to highlight a little bit that, when uranium bull markets go, the spot price of the commodity can move dramatically, but it's the equities that really, the leverage in the uranium space is unreal. And that's because there just aren't very many real players, right? It's the whole fire hose. Like it's like a fire hose trying to go through, or it's Niagara Falls trying to go through a fire hose. There, I got the words out properly. And that's something that you've probably seen before, right?
Absolutely. I spent a large portion of my career in consulting, and in that time, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of junior uranium companies doing evaluations on their projects across North America and worldwide, actually. So it gives me a much broader perspective in the assets that we want to look at and how the market reacts overall. Again, like you said, people get excited and all of a sudden there's twice as many uranium companies out there. But there's only so much good land to go around. There's only so many good projects. So
And so many
only
good
so
people
many
who
will
can
be
do good things
successful.
with those projects.
Exactly. So all key portions of building up a company.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Matthew, for taking the time to bring us through the Kraken Energy story today. Hopefully people learned about the company and then got some tidbits on uranium. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, I'm sure you're easy to find on the Kraken website. And thanks very much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great to meet you, and I appreciate the opportunity.